This is gonna be a review slash impressions of the Darktide Beta last week. I'm coming at this from a perspective of a Vermintide 2 veteran with more than 4,000 hours. And I've been trying to push the difficulty for most of those hours. I played the beta for more than 30 hours and beat the highest difficulty on every map. And I'll just be talking about a bunch of different topics throughout this video. It's not going to be very structured. The first thing I want to talk about is the general melee gameplay. I really like the feel of it. Fatshark nailed most of the visuals and the way the weapons feel. The only thing that was a bit lacking was a bit of a delay after pushing and doing a push attack, but they seem to be aware of it, so hopefully that gets fixed. The main complaint I have about the melee gameplay is that the dodging is way too safe, and once you got up close with enemies, you never really felt in danger of getting hit, except the occasional mauler overhead you dodged into by accident, but not because it was mechanically difficult, but more because you weren't paying attention or a teammate dragged it into you. So hopefully they make it a little more challenging to not take damage when you're close to enemies. Otherwise that part will feel a bit lacking, especially on higher difficulties, since you're basically invincible if you just spam dodge, which isn't great gameplay. Then the range gameplay, I don't have too much experience with range gameplay in general. I've always been more of a melee guy. But the weapons felt good to me, and they also felt quite distinct between the weapons. And it seems like a few of the weapons will definitely have niches. Some of the weapons seem pretty bad, mostly because of the role ranged weapons seem to fill at the moment, which is mostly special sniping or control. And the other roles that are available don't seem too necessary. So I'm not sure if they will see meta play, but all the weapons felt fun to use and they felt mostly great. Then there's a few interesting changes they made to basically the health with the introduction of the toughness mechanic. I think it's very interesting, and it really feels like something like that is necessary if you want to introduce so many more ranged enemies. And I actually quite like what they've done with the curse mechanic, where certain things and going down and getting disabled, getting hit by certain enemies reduces your overall health bar, and combined with the fact that if you get hit in melee range, you always lose health, even if you still have barrier, which I think really helps put a sort of timer on your health. While in V2, for example, there wasn't ever, if you didn't go down, you didn't really receive attrition, and the difference between temp health and real health didn't really matter. I like what they've done like with this, that you'll get chipped down very slightly if you get hit in melee or when your toughness is gone completely, and then you'll suffer like real consequences that will be lasting. But getting hit by ranged enemies is mostly a temporary problem and not long term, which I think really helps mitigate the annoyance that getting hit by ranged enemies provides. Then the lore, I don't know Warhammer 40k lore. I don't know, looked fine to me, seemed cool. I dig it. The enemies, all the specials, I think I really like them. They are quite similar to the specials we had in V2, but they still feel very distinct, and they all seem to create problems in different ways. They mostly have very good like sound design, or like you can almost locate all of them through sound. so you're aware that they exist and you still have to spot them. Except for the sniper and the trapper. Those seem to be the two ones that seem to be missing cues, or their cues are very hard to hear, or maybe I just never picked up on it, but those were the two ones that seemed to be the most silent. I didn't really have any major complaints with them. The only thing was a bit silly that a warp fire just 1 second destroys your complete toughness bar, even if it's just very little leftover flame, which felt a bit weird, but it's probably fine. Other than that, bombers were sometimes annoying, but that's fine. The charger, the timings on dodging all seem very early compared to Vermintide 2. I don't know if I like it, but maybe I'm just fucking up my dodges because I'm too used to the different timings. So maybe once I get used from there, no big deal. The dogs also have a bit of jank behavior, but usually it's fine and they won't end your runs too much, so they're not that annoying. The main complaint I have is with the sniper just being completely silent and then you just getting chunked for half your health because you didn't know he existed. Then the main complaint I have with the game is I really enjoyed the third day, but the first and second day were fucking miserable because the progression is just ass. I really don't like it. It's super slow and you're basically locked into playing the character you want. Maybe long term it's still gonna be annoying, but it's gonna be less annoying. But during the beta it was really annoying because we wanted to complete the highest difficulty because we just wanted to see where the bar is, and getting up to speed to unlocking the level and getting like decent enough gear to make real attempts was so annoying because you have to keep playing the same thing over and over and you make no progress. Well, okay, you make very slight progress through the contracts. That seemed to be the only thing that's shared between the careers. All the other stuff was just for the one dude you made, and it was just so slow and just annoying. And the other problem is the most efficient way to level is to just play, for us it was to just play level 3s over and over again, even though we could complete level 4s with like, I don't know, say a 50% completion rate, but it's not the most efficient way to level and just not a good experience in general. And the other annoying thing is that if, for example, I want to slightly change some stuff about my character mate, like I want to give him a slightly different look or something like that, I would have to make a whole new character and I would have to start all over again, and it takes so long and it's just annoying. I really don't like it. Then about the difficulty, it's, I know I'm not the typical the typical audience, but it's, if this is the end game, if level 5 is the end game, I don't see myself playing for very long, because if something is not even remotely challenging, I'm not that interested. And level 5, once we got to like roughly around level 20 with decent gear, we almost started one-shotting maps, basically one after another. And if we're like 10 levels off the level cap with unoptimized gear while still being very bad at the game, then I'm not I don't think I'll be sticking around very long if that's the max. If they because there won't be mods, so it seems to be not an option, and that's where most of my V2 hours were in the modded realm, pushing the difficulty there. But if that's not available, then I don't know what I will do once I've gotten bored of level 5, I think, and I'll just probably stop playing, which is a shame because the gameplay feels mostly really good. Another complaint I have about the difficulty is that the difficulty in the levels itself seems to be mostly based around ambience. And what that I mean is that well, ambience and specials. But hordes, like, you would basically never get, or like you would almost never get hordes. And if they would show up, then the other spawns would be tuned down as well during the horde. At least that's what it felt like. The same with boss fights. Once you got a boss, the spawns usually seem to be really chill. So those spikes aren't really spikes, or they don't really feel like spikes. Then the main difficulty just seems to be coming from walking into a big group of ambience, mostly ranged ambience, while getting a special wave at the same time, which led to a bit of a spiky difficulty throughout the map, which I don't find the most fun. I would rather have like a consistent difficulty throughout the level. Another thing is that events would also usually be much easier than those most difficult spikes during the map. And talking about spikes, specials would also be very spiky, so to say. They would almost always come in groups of 5, or like 4 or 5 or something like that, and then you would have nothing for a while, and then 4 or 5 of them would show up again. I'd rather there be like a constant stream of 2 or 3 specials while you're being pressured by hordes, because currently there is very little stopping you from making very slow and gradual progress throughout a map, even though the new health mechanics are supposed to like slowly grind you down, but that doesn't really happen because there's very little actual pressure on you during the maps itself. Other than that, I think ranged enemies might be too many of them. Not in absolute numbers, but in ratio compared to the other enemies. It often feels like the main threat is always going to be something at ranged and not in melee. That could be because of the dodges, but I also think that there's just slightly too many ranged enemies compared to melee enemies. Then the careers. I played Psyker, Veteran, and Zealot in the beta. I basically didn't play Ogren, so I don't really know what to say about him. He's very big, and he looks strong, so... but Veteran feels very strong, especially the grenades and the grenade-related talents. Also, on his last row, there seems to be a talent that might make a lot of other weapons work. But I don't know, because I never got to that. So it's very hard for me to judge how good these careers actually are, because I didn't get to see all the traits. I didn't get to see how they played at max level. I didn't get to see them with optimized weapons. So I don't know how good they are in relation to each other. They all seem to have different roles though. And they all seem somewhat necessary. Not like required, but they all bring something nice to the table. So I think the balance is pretty good. I'm not 100% sure though, because I haven't been able to play with maxed characters with like synergistic stuff going on. This is just purely based off my impressions from getting to like level 20-ish with those 3. But yeah, Zealot, a lot of ranged gameplay, very, very valuable with the grenades. He felt very, very good. Then Zealot felt the most fun to play to me, because I could just charge in and get stuck with ranged enemies, especially once I unlocked the level 20 talent that allowed me to regenerate health when I procced my resist death passive, because it really allowed you to sustain in melee, even if you were getting slowly chipped down, because you would get your big boost of health and then you could go again. And it really felt the distinct threat of the enemies in melee range felt very apparent on Zealot, because once I got in there, like the hardest part was always getting past the ranged enemies and getting in melee range, which the dash made relatively straightforward. And then once I got stuck in, I was super safe and never really in danger, except if I would get disabled by something I didn't see coming. Then Psyker felt really useful, but mostly all of the value of Psyker seems to tie it into the grenade, the grenade head pop, which is a little not necessarily boring, but one-dimensional in the way Psyker seems to play out, in that the most valuable thing you can do at almost all times is either using your grenade to pop specials, or using your grenade to pop certain armored enemies or shielded enemies, because you're the best one to remove those. And using all your other stuff didn't feel like it was giving as much to the team as just using the head pop, which is why it didn't feel that fun to play with me, even though there's a lot of interesting things going on with the mechanics. I think with like the force sword and the staff seemed somewhat interesting, even though the function it fills isn't that valuable at the moment with the way the difficulty works. But if that gets changed, then it would gain more value. But at the moment, it feels a little too one-dimensional. Then the visuals in general throughout the levels, it mostly looked like the atmosphere they had going on in the levels were great. Some of the maps felt quite samey, with the terrain all being mostly similar. And the major complaint I have is that it is Darktide, but I don't know if it was my settings or something, but it was really dark. A little too dark for my taste. Very hard to see at certain points. The music was fucking great. I loved it. Very hype tracks. Sometimes a little too hype for the situations you were in, but the music was great throughout. Then the Mourningstar hub feels very incomplete, and what I'm really missing is some place where I can just test out the equipment I have on me at the moment, or test out a quick mechanic or two in my feats or something like you had in the keep in Vermintide 2, or the bar in actually mostly like the keep in Vermintide 2 is what I want. I just want to be able to equip a talent and see what it does real quick, or equip a weapon and see how it feels real quick in a moment. Just swing it around a bit, get used to it, or compare different weapons I have like that. Having to load into a map just to test one little thing is really annoying. If I just want to see if I like a moveset on a weapon compared to another moveset, I would have to load in with one moveset, test it out in the map, get out of the map, grab the different weapon, load in again, and then test it. And that's just way too much work for something that I just want to see real quick. Other than that, there was no crafting, there was no cosmetics and stuff. Maybe, probably those will be in the final release. But the Mourningstar felt very empty and a bit pointless. Also, not being able to hotkey the map or the store or something like that was pretty annoying. Having to walk 30 seconds every time to the fucking terminal to select a new map gets really old real quick if you're grinding something out, like a higher difficulty or something like that. Then about accessibility, not having sensitivity slider in the beta was pretty bad. It should be there in the final release, but still, not having a colorblind mode and not being able to disable wobble, that's very prevalent throughout most things, is a very big minus for a lot of people. So in summary, the gameplay is mostly great, the careers look interesting. I think they have done some very interesting stuff with the new mechanics they introduced, but if without mods, and if there's not gonna be something that is significantly harder than what we had in the beta, I can't see myself playing this game long term. And with long term I mean more than like 200 hours or something like that. which is still a fair amount of hours, but after having put that many hours in V2, it looks very small in comparison.